Hey, welcome back, class. Intro to Graphic Design. I'm Jeremy, I'm your teacher. We're gonna jump into Illustrator for this next assignment. You can build a poster in anything. You can build a poster in Photoshop, you can build a poster in Illustrator, and you can build a poster in InDesign. So why are we doing it in Illustrator? We've done a lot in Photoshop already, we may do more, but the reason why I want you to work in Illustrator is because of its vector tools. I want you to become more familiar with those.
Our poster project, we're going to use just common sayings like bite the bullet, birds of a feather, break the ice, like cut the corners, different things like that.
Before we go into Illustrator though, I want you guys to jump on paper and sketch out some ideas. All of your thumbnails can be on one saying, or you can do a few thumbnails on a few sayings, but I want 6 at least. You need to think about these design elements and principles to help make it a stronger composition. So hierarchy, scale, contrast. Contrast might be an issue with ice. So as I do it light blue for ice color and then white text, I don't know if that's going to be enough contrast to be interesting. So I'll have to see how that works out. All right, now that we have our sketches, we're going to take our favorite one and work on it in Illustrator. Now, we don't really need to bring in the sketch. We could bring in the sketch and try and trace it and do that sketch exactly, but I'm just going to use my sketch as reference. All right, now with Illustrator open, we're going to create a new file. So I'll click New File. Now there's a number of ways we can do New File. We can go File, Menu, New. We can pick them from here, or we can just hit New File. So I'm just going to hit the button New File. All right, so let's give it a title. Instead of just calling it Poster Design, I'll call it Birds of a Feather, because that's the thing that I'm going to work on. So Birds of a Feather Poster. We're going to be working in inches. We'll start with 11 width and 17 as the height, so it will be vertical. Again, this will be vector. 95% of it will be vector. I told you can use a photo in it, but being vector, we can blow it up a lot larger. Now, the photo that we place in it might not blow up as well, or increase or scale as well. The bleeds will be 1/8 of an inch. So let's put in, I already have it in here, but what you normally do is put in 0.125. And then if you click over here on the others, it should fill in the same, or you can click on the link and it will fill in the rest the same. We always use bleeds when we have color go to the edges of our document. That way, when we trim the document, we have a margin of error. So if we're a little bit off on our trimming, we don't see white slivers of the paper left over. So always work with bleeds if you're going to do full color to the edges. And for this assignment, I would like you to do full color to the edges. Color mode is CMYK color. Raster effects. We aren't going to do any raster effects, so don't worry about that. The default for that is 300 pixels per inch anyway. Great, let's go ahead and hit create. Now we're looking at our artboard. You'll see that it's 11 by 17. Everything on the white is where it's going to print. And the bleeds are this red line all the way around it. So if we have color go to the edge, we need to pull those objects, make sure those objects bleed off the edge at least to the red line. In order for you to have all the same tools and the same workspace as me, let's go ahead and set that up. I'm going to go to Window, Workspace, and Essentials. I'm already on Essentials, so I've altered that a little bit. That's why it doesn't look the same. So let's go Workspace Essentials, but then let's go and reset it. So back to Window, Workspace, Reset Essentials. It should look the same as yours now that we have the same thing. We have the toolbar over here and our palettes over here. Let's bring out some more of the palettes that we're going to use for this. So I'll go to Window, and we're going to use the color palette. I like to have the color. Okay. So there's the color. I could leave it floating like this, but I want it to kind of stay connected over here. So I'll click on it and drag it. And once that blue line shows me where it's going to connect, I'll let go. Boom. I like the control bar to show up, so I'm going to hit Control. The control bar is this one at the top. Now, the great thing about the control bar is that it changes depending on what tool you have. So if I have the select tool, I'll see, you know, some of these things. But if I change to like the paintbrush or the type tool, I get additional options up there. And if I select different things on the artboard, then I'll get different options up here like alignment. What else do we need? We need the type, the character and the paragraph palette. So I'm going to go to Window, Type, and Character. There it is. It's paired with the paragraph palette in another tab. So I'll drag that over here and wait for that blue line to show up where I want to drop it and connect it and then let go. So there's my paragraph palette. Also the stroke palette. So window menu, stroke. Now it looks pretty minimal. There's also stroke options up here at the top in the control bar. So if you're using minimal stroke options, you probably don't need the stroke palette showing. And we may not use it today, but I like to have it because I'm normally editing the strokes on my objects. If you go to the options menu on the top right corner, it says show options. So click on that and you'll notice how many more options there are for the stroke settings that aren't up here in the control bar. So there's that. I'll click on that and I'll tuck it in underneath the character palette. And what else? Let's go to Window and Pathfinder. Take this palette and shove it right in between those two and just let go. Okay, so color is now there, Pathfinder, paragraph, and stroke. You can have layers if you want to use the layers, great. But we're really not going to use layers. The thing I love about Illustrator is that every object is essentially in its own layer. So if I take the rectangle tool and draw a rectangle there and expand over here in the layers palette, you'll see that the rectangle is in its own sublayer. Okay, and then if I draw another rectangle, or maybe hold that down, go to an ellipse tool, you'll see that the ellipse is in its own sublayer. So I don't work with layers a lot unless I'm doing a complex illustration and it needs a lot of organization. Okay, so I'm going to take my select tool, drag over all of those to select them, and then delete them. We don't need that for this assignment. All right, let's talk a little bit about the toolbar so that our toolbar looks the same. Right now, my toolbar is in a single column. If you have it in a double column or want it in a double column, you click on these arrows up here in the corner and it converts it to a double column toolbar. And then click on it again and it toggles it back. Okay? All right. Go down to the bottom three dots here. And let's edit the toolbar. You can put in or customize and take out all the different tools. We're not going to do that. I'm going to go to the options menu up here at the top corner and just show you the difference between basic that we're on and advanced. If I go to advanced, it puts it in a double column format and gives us a lot more tools. That used to be the Illustrator default. Now let's go back to the options again. And then up to the options menu up here at the top. And let's go to the getting started. This is a great new thing for beginners. And I think it will help us with our tutorials to stay on the getting started toolbar for a little bit. So I'll hit getting started. Notice how it breaks down the tools into different sections. So it puts the select options, and they are generally in the same place anyway, but it just titles that section. So these are the select tools, the direct select being the white arrow and the select being the black arrow. Okay, and we'll learn the differences between those. There's also the lasso, direct select. We have our different shapes, our drawing tools, So our pencil we'll use today, and also the pen tool. And then we have our modify tools as well. So the shape builder tool, then our transform controls, and our type tools. The navigation tools for me are kind of redundant, and I would try and get used to not using the navigation tools. There's easy key commands. So here under the navigation tools, we have the magnifying glass and the hand. If I take the hand, I could come out here and grab the artboard and move it around. Okay. If I take the magnifying glass, I come out here and click and it zooms in. Or if I hold down Option, it zooms out. All right. But there are easier ways to do that without having to take the time to go over to the toolbar and select those. So what I like to do to zoom in is hit Command plus or Control plus on a PC. Whenever I say Command on my Mac, it's Control on your PC. So Command plus to zoom in, Command minus to zoom out, and then Command 0 puts the whole artboard smack dab in the middle. Okay? And then to get the hand, not the finger, but the hand, you just hit the space bar and you can grab that artboard and move it around. So I don't have to go grab the hand out of the toolbar and then grab my artboard. I just hit the space bar no matter what tool I'm on, and I can grab that artboard and move it around. And that's useful, especially when I'm zoomed in, because I can work on these different details and then just hit the space bar and move it around as I'm drawing. So if I have the pen tool, right, I'm moving around, but I want to kind of move it over a little bit. Okay. Maybe click and drag for a curved one there. All right. So that's how I navigate without going to these navigation tools. If you see a little triangle at the bottom corner of a tool, it means there are more tools paired with that. And to access those tools, you just click and hold the tool down and you can select it. Okay. So with the shape tools, there's a little triangle right there. Click and hold that down. You can see what other shape tools are available. The pen tool. And then also the modification tools. Paired with that, you've got rotate, scale, reflect, and shear. And if you go over here to this little end piece, it tears off those tools and creates a little separate palette form, which is kind of nice if you're using those tools a lot. Switching between tools can be easier than just having to go and manually select them. If you hover over the tools, you can see there are key commands for the tools. So for the selection tool, V will get you over to the selection tool. The pen tool is P. The rectangle tool is M. So as I hit M, it takes me to the rectangle tool. V takes me to the selection tool, and P takes me to the pen tool. So my workflow becomes much quicker because I don't have to keep going back and reselecting those tools. If you don't see those hints on the toolbar, then go up to your Illustrator menu, Settings, and General, and just make sure that is selected. Settings and Preferences is a great place to find why Illustrator might not be working the way you want it to. This is just to set up how you prefer Illustrator to work. By default, for example, Scale Corners and Scale Strokes and Effects is not selected. So you can kind of see how it's a pain if you want that whole object to scale the same and proportionately. You have to make sure that Scale Corners and Scale Strokes and Effects is on. I think that's a pretty good overview and the palettes and the tools that we need for this poster assignment. So what I need to do first is bring in all of these different elements. I've got a lot of type, so I'm going to type this out, scale it up, and put it in. And then I've got some bird shapes, so I'll have to bring in some photos of some birds to use for reference and create these different bird shapes or silhouettes. Let's start with the type. So I'm going to take my type tool right here, just the basic type tool. click on my artboard and just type in birds, hit return, because I want of a on a different line. So of a, and then feather will be on a separate line as well. Okay, great. Now I'll take my selection tool, my black arrow, and you can see that this is like an object. I can move it around. I can go to the corner and scale it. Be careful when you scale your type. If you don't hold down shift, it pulls it and stretches it. And that really infects the integrity. That really affects the integrity of your type, and it doesn't look good. So make sure when you scale up your text, you hold down shift, and it looks nice and clean and proportionate. I also want a typeface that's more bold so that I can maybe put images inside of it. This is going to be a big, bold poster. So this week, just regular weight font isn't going to cut it. So let's go ahead and change that. Oh, and I want to use all uppercase so that there's more area to integrate objects into those letter forms. So an easy way to do that is using the type tool. I can go back and just retype and hold, and put caps lock and just do birds. But that can take a while, especially if you have a whole paragraph. So let me just show you how to quickly change the case of your type. Select the whole thing, or whatever you want to change the case of. If you just want to change the case of one word, you just highlight the word. But I need to change the case of this whole section. So I'll grab this, then I'll go to type, change case. And we have multiple options. We have uppercase, which is what I want, but we also have lowercase, title case, and then there's sentence case. But let's go back to type and uppercase. Perfect. So that's good there. Now we need a bolder font. So I'll come up to my fonts, and I probably just Helvetica and Condensed Black, but we can't see it. So I'm going to grab this and move it over. Great. So now we can see what's happening as we pick our fonts. So Helvetica New, Condensed Black. Looks good. Okay, great. In order to change the letter spacing, I'm going to go to the character palette. Just to start out, I'll change it from auto to optical. Now that's a quick and easy way to tighten up the spaces of your letters. Just go from auto to optical, and it tries to optically figure it out. If it's a good typeface, it'll do a good job, but sometimes it's not really programmed that well into other typefaces. So you can't always rely on the computer giving you good optical kerning. So there's a little bit tighter. If I want it to be even more tight, I can change the letter spacing here and do that, but I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to do the optical. Once I convert this type into shapes, then I'll mess with the spacing again. Being in type format, I can take my type tool or double click on it, and I can highlight and edit it. I could even go up to the edit menu and check spelling. We don't need to do this. I'm pretty sure birds of a feather is spelled correctly, so I'll leave it. I'll leave it there. I'm ready now to convert this into just regular shapes. You go to the type menu and create outlines. The key command for that is Shift Command O. So let me just do that. Shift Command O. And as I zoom in, you see it's not underlined anymore. It's just outlined as shapes. Okay, so I can't go back and edit it. I can't check the spelling anymore. It's just shapes. And all those shapes are grouped together. Okay. I want them in separate groups. So I'm going to ungroup all of this by going to Object, Ungroup All. And then I'll select all of the letters in birds and then hit Command G to group those together. Notice when you go to Object, Group, it's Command G or Control G on a PC. I'll move the A in a little bit closer and select all of that and hit Command G there. So I'm grouping each line together. And then I'll select all of the letters in feather and hit Command G. Great. So birds is grouped, of A is grouped, and feather is grouped. All right. So I'm going to scale that up. Okay. Scale this one up. All right, and then we'll scale this one up. I think I'll break up feather into two sections and maybe have feet or feather on two separate lines. So in order to ungroup those, I can do it two ways, or in order to change this, I can do it two ways. I can ungroup it, so select it, Object, Ungroup, or Shift Command G. Okay. Put it on two different lines and then regroup it together, Command G. All right. But that's a bunch of extra steps. I'm just going to keep it grouped together. And to go inside of that group without ungrouping it, you just double click on it. So double click on the word feather. Notice it shows the breadcrumbs up here saying that I'm inside this isolated group. And I can select the other sections and move those around. Now, I don't want FEA or fe to be shorter, so I'm going to scale that up so it's about the same as the THER. Hopefully it reads like feather. If it doesn't in the end, I'll just have to go back and change it. All right. And then to get out of the group, now that I'm working inside of the group, to get out of the group, just double click somewhere outside of the group. And there you go. All right. Let's tighten the spacing on all of this a little bit. Let's see. And the A. Then bring in the E a little bit more and the R. Okay. Double click to get out. Now let's tighten up of A. So I'll double click on that group, move of in a little bit more, and A. There we go. Now let's tighten up birds. Double click on that to go inside of the isolated group. Oops. It's going crazy on me. So take some time to really make sure the spacing in between those letters is equally as tight. And then double click outside of it when you're done. Great. So I'll scale out birds. I wanted it to kind of fill up the document. Of A, I don't want of A to be larger than the other words, so I'll kind of keep it a little bit smaller and then bring it over, not centered, but maybe off-centered a little bit, like that. Let's see how that looks as we keep working. And then let's scale up feather so that it really fits. So I could go all the way to the edge. Maybe I'll just kind of give it a border. And then my background will go all the way to the edge. Yeah, let's try that. In my sketch, however, even though this looks good, in my sketch, I slanted that text because I wanted to give it a little bit more of a feeling of flight and movement. So I'm going to try that. But before I try that, I'll copy this because I like it. I'll copy this, select it all, Command C, Command V, and just pull it over here to the side. So you don't have to select it, hit Command C, Command V, or Control C, Control V. Just click on it, hold down Option, and drag it over. So it's a quick way to duplicate something. Just Option, click, and drag. Perfect. All right, so let's go ahead and slant this. I'll select all of this, and I'll group this together. Hit Command G. And the shear tool to slant it is over here under the modify menu. It's hidden underneath your rotate. Now, I never use the rotate tool because when you're on the selection tool, you can already scale. And then if you go further out from the corner, you can rotate. So it's already a default with the selection tool. So I never really use those. I normally go to the modify section and change the rotate and the scale to either reflect or shear. But we need shear, so I'll click on shear and then click over here on the outside and tilt that up. Great. Perfect. I've got the text in that I need. Now I need to start bringing in the birds. To bring images into Illustrator, there's a number of ways you can do that. You can go to the File menu and import those, or you can just take those photos from your desktop or your drive and drag them right into Illustrator. So I'll do that. Okay. Then make sure Illustrator pops up and just drag them right in there. Wait for them to open. Perfect. So it just took a minute. Here's my birds. I'll move them off to the side and trace them on the side so they don't get in the way. Another thing that helps with tracing is to lock down your images. So you can select them, shift select to do more than one, and go Object Menu, Lock Selection. You could also select them or go to your Layers menu and hit this empty spot here to lock objects. Great. So now they're locked. As I'm tracing, they won't move on me. Okay. I'll show you two ways to trace them. We'll trace one with the pen tool, and then we'll trace the rest with the pencil tool. I won't go into detail how to use the pen and the pencil tool, but I can do those as separate videos, and you can link to them later. All right, so let's take the pen tool, which is right here. To make straight lines, you just click. Okay, I'm going to Command Z and get rid of those. To make curved lines, you've got to click and drag. Okay, so I'm going to click and drag, and then click without dragging to give me that sharp edged point right there. We need to trace with a stroke color so it doesn't cover up our image. So down in my toolbar, I'll just hit the swap button and swap that fill for a stroke, or just hit the red line in both of them, go to the stroke and double click on it and give myself a black or white color, whatever I can see best as I'm tracing. Okay, and I'll Command Z because those weren't very good points either. So, all right. And I can be a little bit more free with my tracing. It doesn't have to be exact, but we don't want it to look bad. Notice as I've traced, this curve to make this belly is forcing a curve this way, and I don't want that curve there. It's simple. To get rid of that next curve, just click on that last point again, and then it won't force a curve. Okay. Excellent. And I don't really want that beak to be open, so I'm going to kind of make it look like it's closed. Let's take the others and trace those with the pencil tool. Now the pencil is a little more freehand, so it's harder to do with a mouse, but if you have a stylus, it's a lot easier. Double click on the pencil tool to look at its options. You can change the fidelity, meaning if it's more accurate, then every little jig and shake that you make will show. But if you go all the way to smooth, it'll try and really smooth out what you're trying to draw. We don't really want that. I want it to be somewhat accurate, but smooth out my jitteriness that I might get as I use my mouse. Perfect. So there's the settings. Edit selected pass means I can go back and redraw sections of it and it will change it. So I'll leave that there as well. Great. So let's try and trace this bird. Boom. Perfect. Awesome. I forgot to add a stroke color, so let's go ahead and click on the stroke. Give it a color. Oops. Lovely. It turned out pretty good. I don't need all the details in there since I just need the silhouettes. Now I'll take these birds. Kind of fat beak, but we'll see how that looks. Maybe I won't worry about it for this assignment. I don't like the chunkiness here, so being how it can edit selected pass, I'll just click and redraw this section right here. I need to Command plus to zoom in. Oh, too much. Ugh. If it doesn't do what you want, just hit Command Z and try it again. Okay? Perfect. Well, not really, but I like to think of it as perfect. All right. Oops. Awesome. That one took a little more work. I don't know why. Maybe I need to have a little more caffeine. Or a little less caffeine. I'll move that off to the side and then we'll trace our last bird. Okay. Now, if you need to stop partway through, that's okay. Just let go. And then to pick up where you left off, just make sure you get the pencil close enough to where you get that little slash. Okay. And you can pick up where you left off. And sometimes your mouse or your stylus gets in a bad spot and you need to just kind of let go and reset where that mouse or pencil is. Oops. That was bad. So let me kind of do that again. I'll start from here and redraw that section. That looks good. This front section is definitely bad. Lovely. All I need to do is unlock these images and delete them because I don't need them anymore. So, and let's take those birds Let's keep them in outline form as we place them on our poster, just so we can see where they go. As I'm placing them, I'm trying to find a good spot so that they don't really cut up and leave any bad tiny pieces of the type left over. And to help with hierarchy and where the eye should go, and to make it more interesting, I don't want to do all the birds the same size. I want to create this sense of depth and by having those birds different sizes, so it doesn't look so flat. Kind of feels like it's going out into space a little bit. So I'll leave this bird a little bit smaller, and what about this one right here? The placement looks pretty good, but now we need to focus on color. As we change the colors, it may be hard to come up with a color scheme. Let's draw a rectangle for the background color. That's going to go all the way to the bleed marks. And we'll go Object, Arrange, Send to Back. All right, so we've got some basic colors. I decided to do kind of a sky color in the back, with the birds being a totally contrasting color. All right, so we've got so let's talk a little bit about color. You really need to use color to your advantage. So let's use color to our advantage for this poster. We really need to think about color in a way that it strengthens the message of our poster. It's going to strengthen the message and the feeling that we're trying to convey. We also want to use a color scheme that really pops, that doesn't just blend together and look flat, but it creates a lot of contrast and a lot of interest. Now let's integrate the birds into the type a little bit better. So let's blend those together and kind of have those things be a little bit more playful. So the minimal way to do that is to just take your vector objects, or whatever your front objects are. If your front object was your type, you'd select the type. But take those objects and then bring down the opacity. And now I can see the type through it a little bit more. It's more readable. I can see all the lettering. I'm going to take the opacity back up to 100. And then right here in the transparency palette, if you don't see the transparency palette, go to Window Menu and Transparency, and it'll pop up for you. It might not be in the same place as mine, but it should pop up for you. Okay. So go to your transparency palette with those front objects selected, and then let's change the blending mode to something other than normal. Let's go to darken. Cool. It's a little bit more than just making it transparent. Depending on what the colors are, will make it blend together differently. So that's what darken looks like with my colors. Here's multiply. There's color burn. Let's go to lighten. Oh, I've got to reselect them. Oops. So let's reselect them. And let's change it from color burn to lighten. Screen. Delay. Okay. I'm not arguing. Some of these still look good, but still not enough contrast. Okay. Soft, too soft. Hard light, too hard. We need something just right. This is definitely better than just opacity. I'm going to take these birds and I'll take off the blending mode. Okay, and put the opacity all the way up. And then let's use Pathfinder to cut up these shapes, and we can full on customize it. So it's over here on the side, and I'm just going to click on that and drag it out for a second so it's a little bit closer to what we're working on. Okay. Now let me show you a little bit of what Pathfinder does. Pathfinder lets you use shapes to cut up other shapes or combine with other shapes. So let's take the rectangle tool, just draw a rectangle over here, and then I'll draw a second rectangle, kind of like their illustration, but I'll make it a little bit different color so you can see what's happening there. So we've got two rectangles. This first option in Pathfinder unites them. It actually melts them or blends them together. If I select both of those rectangles and then hit unite, they become one object. They just combine together. I'll hit Command Z. Let's look at the next one, which is subtract front or minus front. And it minused everything in the front, including where it overlapped. All right, so that's how we can use shapes to cut up other shapes and make more complex shapes. Then the third option keeps only where they're overlapping and deletes everything else. If we select them both again and pick the fourth option, it keeps everything except where they're overlapping. So you can see that there's a hole in it now. Okay. So I'm going to take that and just hit delete. You understand a little bit more about what Pathfinder does. I'm not going to use these first four shape modes. What I want to do is use this first divide mode under Pathfinder. So for example, if I select these rectangles and hit divide, it cuts them up. It keeps them grouped together, so it kind of feels like it didn't do anything. So you've got to ungroup it. Okay, so Shift Command G, and you can see that it's cut up into its different parts. So that's what I want to use for my main poster, because I do not want to get rid of anything, but I want to utilize like the individual pieces and customize the colors of those individual pieces or delete those individual pieces as I wish. I only have the type and the bird selected, and I'll hit divide. Okay, they've cut each other up, but they're grouped together. So let's go inside of that isolated group. I'll double click. Okay, and you can see that I've got just separate pieces of them now. So if I don't want to use that part inside of the O, I can just take that and delete it or move it. Or I can just take it and completely alter the color of it because it's a separate piece. So do you see what I mean by it feeling more integrated? I can customize the color of each one of those sections. So it has more of a feeling of integration, more of a feeling of space moving front to back. Great. It's a good start. I don't think I'm done, but it feels like a good start. The other one that I built, I feel like the sizing and the placement of the birds is better than this one. However, I do like how this bird only comes into play when it meets the type. So maybe I could change that or integrate that into this one somehow. But this is a good start. In fact, I feel like I'm almost there. So go ahead and play with yours more. Use Pathfinder to cut them up and really customize how they're colored and how they're integrating with the typeface. I feel like this is a pretty good exploration so far using blending modes and Pathfinder. So I'm going to leave it at that, knowing that this isn't quite finished, but I don't want to take any more of your time. But I'll show you some other ways to integrate your vector shapes and put in a photo. For now, peace out. I'll see you in the next section. If you see a little triangle at the bottom corner of a tool, it means there are more tools paired with that. And to access those tools, you just click and hold the tool down and you can select it. Okay. So with the shape tools, there's a little triangle right there. Click and hold that down. You can see what other shape tools are available. The pen tool, and then also the modification tools. Okay, so paired with that, you've got rotate, scale, reflect, and shear. And if you go over here to this little end piece, it tears off those tools and creates a little separate palette form, which is kind of nice if you're using those tools a lot. Okay. Switching between tools can be easier than just having to go and manually select them. If you hover over the tools, you can see there are key commands for the tools. So for the selection tool, V will get you over to the selection tool. The pen tool is P. The rectangle tool is M. So as I hit M, it takes me to the rectangle tool. V takes me to the selection tool, and P takes me to the pen tool. So my workflow becomes much quicker because I don't have to keep going back and reselecting those tools. If you don't see those hints on the toolbar, then go up to your Illustrator menu, Settings, and General, and just make sure that is selected in those Illustrator settings and preferences. Settings and preferences is a great place to find why Illustrator might not be working the way you want it to. This is just to set up how you prefer Illustrator to work. By default, for example, scale corners and scale strokes and effects is not selected. So when you first jump into Illustrator and draw an object with the stroke and rounded corners, as you scale that object up and down, the stroke doesn't scale proportionately, and the corners don't scale proportionately. They stay the same size. Okay, so in the Illustrator settings and preferences, you have to make sure that those are turned on. By default, those are turned off. So you can kind of see how it's a pain. If you want that whole object to scale the same and proportionately, you have to make sure the Illustrator preferences or settings, general, scale corners and scale strokes and effects. You have to make sure that scale corners and scale strokes and effects is on. Bloody hell, that was terrible.